Thank you. I'm glad to have opportunity to share with all of you our main conclusions of Regional Report on Judiciary, which is also part of the Regional Anticorruption Report that Seldi prepared. I'll try to be brief and to share only main conclusions and recommendations that we prepared in this process. Just a second to share my screen. Corruption and a lack of independence and undue influence are still prevalent in judicial systems of Western Balkan countries. Separation of powers and the independent judiciary remain only a theory. This is one of the major obstacles on the European path of the Western Balkan countries. Despite the favorable assessment of legislative reform, in practice, the judiciary is not protected from political influence or influence of the legislative and executive branch. This is especially evident in the selection and promotion of judicial official holders, accompanied by accusation of bias, conflict of interest, and inconsistent implementation of law. All of the countries have been carrying out prolonged judicial reforms, which entail the adoption of strategic documents, laws that keep failing us bring closer to our goal, depoliticized and independent judiciary. Significant progress has not been observed beyond the formal legislative approximation mandated by the EU. As a result, public perception of judiciary corruption is grim. According to public survey prepared within Seldi project in the Western Balkan countries, as you may see on this graphic, over 50% of citizens in each country, up to 94 in one moment in Albania, believe the judiciary officials are corrupt. Independent judiciary is highlighted as one of the key reform priorities in the EU accession process. Besides that, work independence protects judges and prosecutors from all kinds of influence, both criminal and political. Appointment, promotion, and dismissal of judges in the Western Balkans is followed by the strong political influence and corruption affairs. I wouldn't go in details for each country. If you are interested, you can see it in the report and also in our policy document that tackles judiciary as a special focus. I will say also that besides independence, accountability and integrity of judiciary remains also vulnerable areas of the reform in the region. European Commission precisely reminds through its report on the Western Balkan countries that results in the enforcement of disciplinary accountability and of code of ethics for judges and prosecutors are still very, very limited. Western Balkan countries typically do not have legal provisions and bodies dealing with corruption that is especially among judges and prosecutors. Lack of independence and integrity of the judiciary in Western Balkans directly affects poor performance in fight against corruption. Recent results in the region have not been impressive. This is indicated by track records in corruption cases, especially for high-level public officials. The number of final convictions of public officials implicated in corruption remain in the single digits, despite public knowledge which indicates otherwise. According to all relevant international reports in the previous period, main reasons for this are political influence, institutional capacities, and weak institutional cooperation. In the country of Western Balkans, institutional arrangements vary considerably among countries regarding anti-corruption specialization. From Albania, which have specialized anti-corruption court, to no specialized institution in Kosovo. The European Commission has emphasized that Western Balkan countries show clear elements of state capture, including links with organized crime and corruption at all levels of government and administration, as well as strong connection of public and private interest. EU has repeatedly asked for establishment of concrete and sustained track records in tackling corruption, money laundering, and organized crime. Despite these warnings, recent results in the region have not been impressive. There are many steps that Western Balkan countries need to undertake to achieve EU standards of law enforcement. We prepared some recommendations, which I will say now, that are specifically for the judiciary and prosecution, since the judiciary is the institution providing the key check and balances to state capture. Despite continuous attempts and reforms, judicial independence and freedom of corruption has not yet not been achieved in any of the countries in the Western Balkans. Independence of judiciary and prosecutorial council in Western Balkans should be secured by having its judges elected by members, by creating their own procedural rules. These should be public and open for scrutiny. The participation of government ministries, typically of justice, in judicial self-governing bodies should be minimized or abolished altogether. Countries where majority of judicial self-governing bodies are not elected among judges and by judges should adopt reform to increase relevant voting powers. The processes of appointment, promotion, and dismissal of judges and prosecutors needs to be transparent to public while following legal procedure. Existing codes of judicial ethics should be amended to address corruption, since there are no specific legal provisions and bodies dealing with judiciary corruption. In countries where both prosecutors and courts are governed by the same body, prosecutors and judges need to be separately set up. And last but not the least, continuous training for holders of judicial office should be made compulsory and accessible to all. This will ensure their competence in terms of knowledge and qualification. Since I come from Montenegro, which in one point of EU integration process were a leader or front runner in the Western Balkans, I might say that all the reform results which were positively assessed by EU are now threatened to be annulled, since we came into a stage that all the constitutional reform and the reform of our judicial system is not enough when we lack the implementation, and we now are facing the blockade of the system, judicial system, crisis of the prosecutorial and also judicial council. In a previous period, you probably know that we had the proposition of new parliamentarian majority to change the prosecutorial laws that was negatively assessed by Venice Commission. And at this moment, I can say it's a short way from a regional leader to blockade of the judicial institutions. So I think research and reports like this may be only productive if the stakeholders within our country read them and follow the good recommendations and implement it in our system. Thank you for your attention. I hope I didn't take too much time for other participants.